Good afternoon, everyone, once again. Welcome to today's edition of the Distinguished Personality Lecture Series of the West African Transitional Justice Center. This is one of our flagship programs where we bring scholars in the field of social justice in general. Of course, we have a professor of gender and history delivering this lecture today, to come and give us some thoughts on their expertise regarding this field. And the West African Transitional Justice Center is based in Nigeria, and it's designed to help bridge the practice and theory of transitional justice across the West African corridor. And we also try to make our interventions globally by inviting people from different areas to come and lecture us on their areas of expertise. Apologies, we're starting a bit late. We're trying to help those with technical difficulties manage joining us, but we hope that some more persons will join us as the event proceeds. So we have Professor of Gender and History from the University of Port Harcourt, Professor Mfon Ekpootu, who has graciously afforded us the grace to have on our platform, and she'll be talking on the aspect of mainstreaming women into the political landscape of Nigeria. So we're talking of moving women from the margins, to the mainstream of politics. As you all know that we are advancing in our political trajectory in Nigeria as we shift, as we gradually advance towards 2027. Of course, we know recently we had the coalition and stuff like that. We've also had in this is the fourth or fifth republic challenges of women who are participating in elective offices, and I'm talking of Senator Natasha. Of course, recently we've been hearing of court cases regarding our reinstatement, into the Senate, and these are challenges that we are hoping that we can tease out and understand how to further integrate women into the political landscape of Nigeria. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the platform to the moderator of the session, Dr. Abimbola Stephen-Adesina, who has graciously also agreed to moderate this session. So over to you, Dr. Stephen-Adesina, who is the acting head of Department of Theatre Arts, University of Ibadan.
All right. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm using my phone, so if you're not seeing my face, forgive me, but let me just do a brief of Professor Mfon Ekpootu. She's a professor, and she's a professor of Gender and Social History in the Department of History and Diplomatic Studies at the University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Her career reflects a deep and enduring commitment to academic excellence, intellectual rigor, and gender-focused historical inquiry. A widely traveled scholar, Professor Ekpootu's work transcends traditional disciplinary boundaries, engaging historical, legal, and policy frameworks to interrogate the lived experiences of African women. Trained in a multidisciplinary research environment at the Center for Social Sciences in Kolkata, India, Professor Ekpootu brings a globally informed perspective to her scholarship. This training, combined with her participation in numerous national and international conferences and collaborative research initiatives, has positioned her as a leading voice in African gender history and policy studies. A research interrogates the intersections of gender, migration, labor, and sexuality with particular emphasis on female trafficking, sexual labor, and gendered migrations. In recent years, her scholarly lens has expanded to include gender dimensions of peace building, post-conflict reconstruction, and environmental conflict in the Niger Delta. Our exploration of how African women navigate socio-cultural and political economic structures has informed her course development, student supervision, and published work. Professor Ekpootu's academic portfolio includes several highly cited publications such as Beyond Victims, Gender Constructions of Militancy in the Niger Delta, Ibadan Journal of Gender Studies, 2019 to 2020. Women in Disarmament, Mobilization and Reintegration Program in the Horn of Africa, the Hornbill Bulletin, 2018. Sex Work and the Social Legal Space, and Updates, Rootlet, 2018. Sexualizing the City, Female Prostitution in Nigerian's Urban Centers in Historical Perspective, Bill, 2017. Interrogating Human Trafficking in Nigeria, African World Press, 2012. Currently, she is undertaking groundbreaking research on women's roles in environmental and ecological conflict zones in the Niger Delta, an area she believes is central to understanding resistance, resilience, and agency in marginalized communities. Professor Ekpootu is a SEHIS Research Fellow and was named the SEPHIS Codestra Young Historian in recognition of her contributions to African scholarship. She is a life member of the Historical Society of Nigeria, where she also served as National Treasurer, and continues to actively involved in advancing historical knowledge and gender advocacy across academic spaces. On this note, I'd like to welcome you all to this afternoon's presentation. You're welcome, Professor Ekpootu.
Thank you very much. I've been trying to share my screen, but I'm having a lot of difficulty. It's not even allowing me to share. I wanted to share my PowerPoint to use, and because it would, otherwise but I'll just keep trying while I'm talking. So thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know if I'm being heard.
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Oh, okay, good. So my paper is on women and political followership in the South-South region of Nigeria. Oh dear. The paper examines the multifaceted nature of political engagement among Nigerian women in the South-South region through the lens of political followership. Now, followership is inextricably tied to leadership. They are both integral to democratic politics. However, fellowship has traditionally occupied a marginal space to leadership in the literature. The reason for this is the historical perception of leaders as drivers of a nation's success or failures. And this heavy emphasis on leaders is responsible for this dominant focus in the literature on leaders to the marginalization of followers. But in recent times, followership studies is gaining traction as they're now followers are now being recognized as a crucial aspect and active component of the leadership process. So what is political followership? Mary Uhaiben and Rigo and Lowe and some others in their groundbreaking 2014 study on followership, were the ones that actually established a formal theory that has been further developed over the years on followership. In their work, the authors separated followership from the study of leadership. They focused on followers not merely as byproducts of leaders, but as distinct entities. Now, this shift allowed for a greater emphasis on the behaviors and characters of followers. They characterized follower traits as motivations, perceptions, constructions that influence how followership is defined and enacted. Followership behaviors then is described as actions performed from the perspective of a follower or during the act of following. Political followership therefore refers to the action and attitudes of individuals or groups who associate themselves with political leaders, parties, or ideologies. This encompasses a whole work, and then it's not just based on voting. It goes beyond voting to include campaigning, policy advocacy, civic education, involvement in party structures, vying for political offices, and working within the electorate to influence the political landscape. It's very important to note that followership is not static. It's a very dynamic process, and it's a continuum. So one person, somebody can be a leader as well as a follower. For instance, you have the governors that they are leaders in their own rights, but they have higher political, actors that are their principals, like the president. You cascade that down to the local government areas, local government council governance, and then you begin to have leaders as well as followers. And by the way, you have leaders are taken from followers. So it is very, very important to discuss followership in the whole dispensation of political. Hello? Am I being heard, please?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Am I being heard? Ah, okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Network. Okay. So when you talk about, when you bring, women into this mix of followership, it brings up the gender question. The experiences and priorities of women, often influenced by gendered roles and responsibilities, can actually differ from those of men, leading to varying ways that they approach leadership. It should be remembered that political activities do not take place in a genderless vacuum. The prism through which legal frameworks and power structures influence rights distribution within a society is gendered. Now, these gender differentials impact on women's political engagement, including followership behaviors. Analyzing the ways in which women engage with and support political figures, movements, and ideologies yield important insights into gendered political landscape. It aids in recognizing barriers to women's political involvement and informs strategies for enhancing inclusivity and equality in the intricate dynamics of women's political participation in Nigeria. It allows one to be able to understand the nuances, especially where you have factors as gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and religion collectively shaping women's experience in the political arena. By employing this lens, the analysis transcends a simplistic view of political marginalization, delving into the diverse ways in which different groups of women interact with the political system and actors. For instance, while Nigerian policy of women's exclusion can differ, another example is women from elite classes are more prone to enjoy greater access to political networks than women from the lower income earning class, who suffer substantial financial obstacles. And if you even look at the media, the social media, it has access, can be free, but it remains uneven. And religious affiliation can also impact on how women engage politically. The focus, the area of focus, as I already said, is the South-South geopolitical zone, and it's comprises Edo, Delta, Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, and Cross River State. I know I've stayed long, but so I'll just go straight to the historical context. Now, when we're talking about the historical context, we're trying to look at the ways that women's political engagement has evolved over time. And then when you're looking at the pre-colonial political landscape, in the literature, there's generally this trope of gender complementarity, and it runs through the discourse of gender roles in pre-colonial Nigeria. And that's why, and that's because through systems that often are king and leadership roles, these duals reflected a balance of gender responsibilities and underscored the contributions of women to governance, economy, and the social order.
Prof.
So we're talking about the historical context, and I'm saying that when you talk about the pre-colonial political landscape, there is usually this trope of gender complementarity that runs through in the discourse of gender roles in pre-colonial time. And this is probably because traditional societies at this time were governed through systems that acknowledged and incorporated women into decision-making. The dual-sex indigenous political structures at that time allowed and reflected a balanced contributions of women to governance, economy, and the social order. And I'm saying that, when we are looking at the pre-colonial times, we often see that women's political activism was kind of given a platform through certain institutions. And most of these institutions were queen mothers, institutions of priestess, spiritual realm, institutions of women councils, age grades, market union. These were platforms through which women engaged in political activism. And we have, like you see on the screen, we have the Emotan of Benin. She was there in the 15th century. She was a queen mother. She was very close to the Prince of Udwa, Prince Ogun Oba Ekwari. I don't know, I might, pardon me if I bastardize that name. Now, she was known to have played a crucial role in helping the prince to reclaim his throne in successions. And she came to be immortalized. And as you can see, you have the Oba Ekwari too, paying homage to her because she was immortalized, and then a statue of hers was set up or constructed. Now, she was the first before you had Queen Idia, that is a bit more popular in terms of the literature. Now, Idia was the Ioba, or I think the queen mother, that's what you call it, at that time, and she reigned in the 16th century. She wielded power beyond the throne during her son's reign. She played a key role in securing his position, navigating internal conflicts, and as a military strategist who led people to success in the Ida War. When you look at other areas like Rivers State, present-day Rivers State and Bayelsa, you have historians like Awutu and Michael, Sukari Judge. These people, they have written of notable female regents that have played one part, crucial role or the other, usually behind the throne. In the spiritual realm, like I said, is also another place, a forum or platform where women's powers were very visible and then they engaged in some sort of political influence. And then we had, so in this kind of case, you had priestesses like in Cross River State, you had the priestess of the water deity, usually called Ekanyin. And then you had the Egbesu war deity priestess, who was responsible for purifying the warriors before they go to war. This was dotted all around throughout the region. It's not just one place. And so what was important here that I want to emphasize is that, yes, they talk about complementarity, and women were given a space of influence, but this was not the same for everybody. And most of the literature, most of the discussion or the discourse on women at this time engaging in political activism, one common denominator is that they were women of rank, women of affluence. Elite women. When we get to, during the colonial era, you have women that were educated. At this time, women that were close to the seat of government. But one thing that was different from the pre-colonial times to the colonial times is that the reverence for motherhood played a part in lifting up and highlighting the influence of women. If you notice, in most of the pre-colonial times, the deities were nice. It's not like it's no longer there. But the reverence that was given during the pre-colonial times filtered out of the spiritual realm, economic influence. Economically, women were also very influential, and this runs through the pre-colonial and colonial times. So what I'm saying here is activism, female activism had at some points by men, they have never had or been able to take the kind of reins of power that would say, okay, it is equitably represented. However, in pre-colonial times, you had more reverence for the kind of duties that women were doing than you had from the colonial times. Now, in the colonial times, what the problem was that the colonial government and Victorian culture had impacted on the Nigerian setting. And so patriarchal Victorian norms were being impacted on the people. And what this did is that were economic visibility. At the same time, colonial rule engagement. For instance, we talked about the fact that women at that time were elite women. Now, colonial education actually allowed space for women to be educated. And educated women, most of the time running to Ransom Kuti, Lady Abayomi, Margaret Ekpo, Janet Mokele. These were all people who were educated and structures to resist what they saw as oppressive colonial policies. And so you had Margaret Ekpo, who is renowned, a historical figure, for the kind of activism that she did. women engaged in these group actions. Sometimes, a lot of times, the same thing that was happening in the pre-colonial times with regards to using market unions as mobilization, and that continues till today. So a lot of these leaders, from Ransom Kuti to Margaret Ekpo, they utilized market unions as mobilization and platforms to fight colonial oppressive policies. Margaret Ekpo formed a market union in 1946, and this was instrumental to her campaigns, to her mobilization, to her gaining eventually a seat in the Eastern House region in 1961, alongside Janet Mokolo. So what we see is that women's political activism or followership was more effective when it revolved around traditional settings. At this time, traditional settings that had already gained root, and they utilized their feminine traits and feminine, even they actually utilized the stereotypical tenets, social cultural norms for their own interests when it suited. I'm talking about the pre-colonial. And that is why they were utilizing that spiritual realm to influence politically. And so you see, we move on to the colonial and the post-independent era, and women activism is still being hinged very much around unionism, trade unions, and all of that. You had the 1929 Women's War that is well known, and that revolved around the market women. They galvanized around that platform. Prior to the 1929 Women's War, you had, resistant movements and protests by women around the region, in Bonny, in Calabar, in Akwa Ibom, in Delta State. Women were mobilizing. And what was the platform that they used? It was the market. What one can see when you want to look at both pre-colonial and colonial times is the kind of activism that was going on. You have to take into consideration the context at that time, of course. But these platforms, these trade unions, this market unionism laid the groundwork for what we have in today's political landscape of female activism. I'll try to hurry. So here, I want to look at followership models and see how we can impact this on the Nigerian scenario or context. Now, there are several political models, but I'm going to use just two. That by Robert Kelly, 1988, as well as Chalef, 1995. Robert Kelly and Chalef are proponents of two widely used models of followership, but they approach it from distinct philosophical angles, and they emphasize different dimensions of follower behavior. Robert Kelly introduced his followership model in his 1988 Harvard Business Review article in praise of followers. Now, Kelly used his model on the level of followers' critical thinking and active engagement. In other words, his model classifies followers based on the level of critical thinking and engagement. And it was from here he identified 5 types of followership. The effective followers, these were known as the stars. And this kind of followers are high in the scale of critical thinking, and they possess high levels of engagement in the polity. So they are very proactive in challenging leaders, as well as supporting, as the case may be. You also have the conform. the conformist applies the yes people. Now, their level of critical thinking is low, but they are active followers. And they rarely question, you know, they are the yes people. They are loyal to their principle, they are loyal to their political parties, they are loyal to the leader at that time without being critical and unquestioning. You have the passive followers. These are called the sheep. They are people with low critical thinking and low levels of engagement, and they rarely and they rely heavily on directions and avoid responsibility. You also have the alienated followers. And these are women, or followers rather. We'll talk about how it can be fixed onto the Nigerian scenario. These are followers with very high critical thinking, but they engage, their level of engagement is very low. They are disengaged even though they think critically. And this disengagement may be as a result of disillusionment with the polity, some form of oppression, or even expulsion. And then the last one, the fifth one for Kelly, is the pragmatic survivor. Now, the pragmatic survivor in this case, as the name implies, they are pragmatic. They are adaptable, they are situational. They shift styles based on context. They can easily adapt and they can easily defect to other parties as long as it aligns with whatever, what they can get, it aligns with their interest. So we talk about Chalef. Chalef has 4 types. And in his book, The Courageous Follower, Chalef's emphasis is on moral responsibility of followers to support and challenge their leaders. His main idea is that followers must show courage to support and challenge leaders ethically. So he's very big on ethics. While Robert Kelly is more interested in the how of followers. How do they engage? Chalef talks about ethical responsibility of followers. He believes that organizations thrive, polities thrive when followers are empowered to speak truth to power, to organization, and help leaders in whatever setting avoid ethical mishaps. ERA's followership model is built, therefore, on support for the leader and willingness to challenge the leader. And from here, he gets 4 dimensions or 4 typologies of followers. One is the partner. The partner has a high support level, as well as a high ability to challenge. This partner is seen as the courageous partner. That's the ideal for Chalef. While for Kelly, it is the partner. It is the exemplary and effective follower that is seen as, you know, the ideal. Then you also have the implementer for Chalef. And the implementer is loyal and hardworking, but avoids questioning authority even when necessary. And so this follower has high, you know, support, but low challenge. Chalef also has the individualist with a willingness to challenge leaders, but lacking collaboration, and sometimes even being alienated too. So they are often vocal critics, often marginalized due to antagonism or opposing ideas or rhetorics. This has low support and high ability to challenge. The last one is resource. You have this is the low support, low challenge. They have minimal engagement, they are passive, and they can be transactional. So for Kelly, followers are critical to preventing toxic leadership and maintaining organizational health. Caleb believes that followers and leaders orbit around a purpose. Followers do not orbit around a leader. In other words, they have the right to challenge each other to be the most effective that they can be. So, having seen the kind of global followership models that are out there, what type of typologies of female political followers do we have in Nigeria? Before we get on to the specific typologies of female political followers in Nigeria, I would like to say that they can be broadly, you have broad categorizations of female political followers into three. You have the patronage-based followers, ideologically driven followers, strategic and instrumental followers, not mutually exclusive and can overlap in practice, but they can offer, a useful framework for understanding the diverse ways women engage with political actors and processes. So the patronage-based followership is characterized by women's political engagement that stem from personal connections with influential male political leaders or actors. In this context, women may be drawn to political participation by the prospect of receiving material benefits, job opportunities, or other forms of patronage in return for their loyalty. This type of followership is inherently transactional, as women's involvement in politics is often contingent upon the ongoing provision of resources or opportunities from their patrons. Instances of this can be observed in women who take roles as campaign volunteers or even members of political support groups, primarily seeking access to the advantages that come with the association with specific politicians. In contrast, you have the ideologically driven followership, which reflects a deeper commitment to political beliefs and values shared with a particular party, candidate, or movement. Women who fall into this, women who fall into this category are motivated by a desire to advance specific political agendas, to champion social justice, or safeguard the interests of marginalized groups. Their loyalty and engagement are rooted more in a deeper commitment to the political cause than a pursuit of personal gain or patronage. Examples of this typology could include women who actively campaign for a political party because they resonate with its platform, or those who mobilize support for policy initiatives that align with their convictions. This form of followership illustrates the potential for women to engage in politics not merely as beneficiaries of patronage, but as active agents of change driven by their ideological commitments. Then the last one is strategic or instrumental followership. And this refers to a form of political engagement where women deliberately align themselves with political figures or organizations to pursue specific objectives, regardless of, political objectives regardless of the outcome. So within these three broad categories, you now have specific typologies that is written here. You have grassroots mobilizers, you have party loyalists, you have political decision makers, voters, activists, elite political supporters, you have religious and cultural influencers, you have digital advocates. Of course, grassroots mobilizers are, within the rural areas a lot of times, or those NGOs that mobilize, and they do a lot in terms of mobilizing for votes. You have party loyalists, especially with the women's wing and those who work within the party structures. You have political decision makers, those that have actually within the political decision-making landscape. The voters, this is where a lot of followers tend to flow. They are there on election day to vote. But voting is not just, in the Nigerian system, it takes a lot. You have to go through getting your card, and then all the steps that you take before you get to voting. So that's why INEC released a number that was so outrageous. You have about 93 million people, registered voters. But at the end of the day, the number of people that registered were less than 30% of that number. And it is between that step of registering as a voter to actually voting, a lot of things go on that in a lot of ways are gendered, as well as leading to showcasing the kind of barriers that women and even men face as political followers. Because it is within that time that some people decline from voting as a result of maybe threats, as a result of fear of violence. So many things go into that. And so when you talk about voters and you talk about apathy, one needs to be more careful about how you describe people that had registered, had wanted to vote, and not being able to vote, and people that did not register. Because when you look at the numbers and then you see the numbers that actually voted, there's a tendency to erroneously lump all of them together and said, well, apathy, they are not interested. They are passive followers. Now, these typologies, we have talked about it. So how does this, if we want to say, how does it relate? We have typologies of female followers in Nigeria. How does this tie in to the kind of models that are out there, and what does it mean? Even while I was talking about the broad categories that you can fit all of this into, it was already clear, where some of them could have. A lot of the times when you're talking about grassroots mobilizers, these are rural women that do not, a lot of them don't have the resources. As a matter of fact, a study by the Stakeholders Network, an NGO here in the Niger Delta, in Port Harcourt actually, they have actually, released a report. And that report shows that within the Niger Delta, there is a lot of vote buying, even comparatively to other regions. other zones, Rivers State, Bayelsa, Edo Delta, Akwa Ibom. Of course, there are variations within this region, but this region is known to have those tendencies for vote buying, to understand the context. The South-South zone, these states fall within the Niger Delta. It has this past, this environmental degradation problem that accentuates the poverty. But it is such a contrasting zone because when you look at literacy reports, you see that a whole lot, that you have a lot of, the literacy rate is high comparatively, but the poverty level is also very high, especially in the rural areas. And this tends to be ignored. So when we are talking about followership, political participation of women, a lot of the grassroots organizations, the women's rights organizations, go to the rural areas and they try to mobilize. And who are the people that a lot of times go to vote? They are people that see that as an opportunity to make some money. It becomes a problem and calls for civic education. For activists like the women's rights, the ones that are leading, the ones that have the political information, these people, they are fewer in number than the masses. And when we're talking about women making 47% of registered voters, it is the masses that constitute this. And so it becomes very, very necessary and important to look into how these women are mobilized. And it also brings up issues of rubber stamp representation. We would look at this a bit more when we're talking about, talking about the barriers. But from this typology, one can see that a lot of the people within the region, and actually in extension to Nigeria, a lot of the followers fall within the passive, followers for Kelly. They are neither engaged nor critical. They also have the pragmatic survivors. This one, they are adaptable. They're just based on get. And you cannot discount the poverty level that leads to this. So when we're talking about followership models, it is not exclusive. So you have a little bit of all blended together. Even the exemplary effective models, in some cases, could turn pragmatic. Let us look at what is happening in the country here and there. And so when you could look exemplarily, perhaps effective, but they have some of those passive, resourceful tenets within that typology of followership. So what shapes followership, political followership, female political followership in Nigeria? Gender stereotype is one of them. And this is very important because it cuts across, a lot of things that women do, how they experience followership. It is dictated by gender stereotypes. How women are supposed to behave, how they should act, who they are. These culturally ascribed tenets is, given to women, and then you have to toe the line and abide by it. And it affects how they, perform or enact followership. You have to understand a woman, a follower, even as she is a follower, is a woman. And then she imbibes all the gender stereotypes within her. And this impacts on how she is, on how she engages in followership. Cultural norms. This is, I looked at, when I'm talking about this, I looked at patriarchal social structures, especially paternalism, because this in some ways also entrenches gender stereotypes. When you have political leaders, political godfatherism, and then this paternalism or paternalistic tendencies or attributes looks at the woman as weak and in need of protection, and then incapable of doing certain things. So the political arena is seen as male, traditionally male. So when women step into it, they feel it should be given to you. Rhetorics, the failure of the gender bill for so many times underscores this. Women are given the place rather than taking it. And so you find that paternalistic attributes color women's, performance of followership. And we talk about godfatherism rather. How many women come out and have godfathers? What we see, and this also kind of underscores this patriarchal, paternalistic, gender stereotypes all mixed in one, is that if you take a look at the political actors, female political actors, a lot of them have the heritage of political actors. They are either wives, I'm not saying all. Historically, wives or relations or, some form of kinship. And this kind of drives, hello? Okay, hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof. We can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, because it's okay. Sorry about that. So what I'm saying is the kind of how this underscores or colors female followership cannot be discounted. We talk about the party structures. All the major political parties, PDP, APC, they have their rules and regulations. They have their constitution. And this constitution embedded in them gives space to women. But how do you say that a woman if you're giving two slots for each state, it should be former governors, former deputy vice, not even deputy vice, because they would get a woman there. There should be the Senate, people that are, former senators, former deputy senators, former presidents. What are you saying? Has there been any woman in this country that has been a Senate president? What happens? So we just get laws in place, and then women are included. Inclusivity, yes, we are politically correct. And then what you are rather more intentional about is the women's wing. And so you tell yourself that you're being inclusive by having women's wing. And what are women's wing? What kind of say do they have? What women's wings do, this has generated a lot of controversy in the literature amongst women's rights organizations. What women's wings do is that they perform the gender stereotypical roles for the political parties. They are sent to mobilize the women for the men. They are there when they're doing their elections, they perform all the feminine, inverted commas, open and close. This is a problem because what it does is to entrench tokenism, symbolic representation. And so we remember again the typologies of followership, implementer. So they can be critical. And in some ways, these women's wing also have some bit of resource, some bit of pragmatic survival. We also look at the legal and institutional barriers that shape, because if you have a buoyant, legal climate that enables women to have their voices heard, it encourages political followership. But when you're having, despite Nigeria being signatories to so many international agreements, including CEDAW, despite the Gender Policy Bill 2006 that asks for 35% affirmation action, laws are signed, international agreements are agreed upon. But when you look at comparatively how the political climate and the level of female presence in decision-making, hierarchies, it is deplorable. It would seem as if we are actually going down from 1999. Studies show that. The data shows that. The percentage of women in the National Assembly, it is decreasing every day. Female representation is going down. The rates are decreasing. But Nigeria is talking about inclusivity.
Sorry, Prof, if I be hard. Our time is far spent. If you could just wrap up in like 5-10 minutes.
How many minutes? Whoa.
Like 10 minutes or 5. Yeah, thank you.
10. All right. So because of how far we've the time problem, let me go to barriers. And I want to use this quote to talk about the barriers of female political followership. And this, I don't know if you can see my screen. This is a quote from, you can? I'm sorry?
Yes,
can
you
you see
the
my
screen? Yes, we can see your screen,
okay.
Prof. Thank you.
There's a quote, and this is this has gained traction and notoriety in the country. This quote by Honorable Mohammed Kazaura, former member of House of Representatives, is what I would use because it encapsulates everything that acts as a barrier to women's political followership. It is good to give women power, but not too much, and I'm quoting him. They play a good role in our lives. They take care of our lives. They take care of our children. They take care of everything. They cook for us. They did, everything for us. But what I fear, Mr. Speaker, they control us at home. When we give them opportunity outside the home, when they control us outside at home, they would capture everything. More so because women are very intelligent, you would see a chief, a big man controlled by his wife. So if you give them more chance, one day they would overthrow us. One day you will find only women in this chamber and they would mess up, because when they go zigzag, we are the ones who strengthen them. We are the ones controlling them. That is why God said they should come after us. We would marry them. They would serve us. This speech is from a serving. At that time, he said this was a plenary hearing of a serving member of the House of Representatives.
Hello, Prof.
Yes.
Our time is up, ma. I'm sorry. Everybody is enjoying your presentation.
Let me just give me 5 minutes or 2 minutes.
All right, thank you very much, ma.
2 minutes, okay. So what I'm trying, why I posted this is because everything is in there. The lack of political will, the paternalistic, perception about women as not being able, the fact that if you do not even have the political network, it becomes difficult. The fact that women are not even seen as being capable. The fact that that the men in the ruling, in the places of leadership, feel that women are best suited to the domestic sphere. I mean, this encompasses everything. And at this point, you don't even need to let's go searching for what are the barriers or what are everything. It's all encapsulated there. Sociocultural norms, tendency to overlook the power of women, not even regarding women as anything, block a lack of political will. What is the current trend now? You have a vibrant space of grassroots civic and political activism in the South-South, success stories of very strong political decision makers like Itakiwa, Nkoyotoyo, and a lot of them. But at the same time, you have a preponderance of passive conformist implementers, pragmatic survival type followers, which impacts negatively on leadership outcome. And so I would say, in concluding, women are not just followers. They are change agents. Equal representation strengthens democracy. You empower a woman's voice, you also empower the nation. And since I've been told to stop talking, I would stop here. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, ma. And thank you everybody for staying with us. At this point, we'd like to take questions. Yes, we'd like to take questions. Do we have questions for Professor Mfon Ekpootu? Ekpootu.
Yeah.
Ekpootu. All right, thank you. Yes?
Welcome.
All right. I'm not seeing anybody with a question here.
Oh, I was getting messages from.
Okay, maybe they are sending messages to you directly.
No. This is
Is
not,
it me?
No, yeah, I think it was just to tell me that my time is up. I didn't see it.
I'm sorry. Thank you, ma'am. Yes. Yes, I hope the females will stop being marginalized, and it will be changing. The narrative will be changing.
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. Thank you, Prof, for your very insightful lecture and the models that you shared with us. I know we're talking about followership and the kind of barriers, the kinds of followers that we have and the kind of barriers to followership within the Nigerian context at the moment. In your view, would you say that the occupation of political positions by women has been beneficial to women, or that it's not enough for women to occupy these positions, but to be able to advance the roles of women, within the positions that they occupy. And the reason why I'm saying that is that we had the lecture earlier in the year where we're looking at the South African Parliament and the kind of representation that women had there, and the lecturer was able to inform us that it's not enough to just have women, in these positions, but it's also the kind of capacity that women that occupy these positions, that matters. What will be your take on this in the Nigerian context? Yeah.
Yes, within the Nigerian context, I'll start with a little thing. I don't know anybody that watched that video of that man that was that honorable that was talking. Women were there. And I was watching them. It was only one woman, one or two, that had on this, the right expression on their face. Others were giggling. In the House of Representatives, others were giggling at what that man said. So what kind of female representative are you? It again, we have to look at, and to be very honest, this is a very personal opinion. Affirmative action, it took me time to really, think of it as really emboldening, but I see it now because maybe it allows you that space. But even when you have affirmative action, it doesn't mean anybody can just sit down, enter into it, because then you're not helping the women. So yes, I agree. It is not just the numbers. The number of women that have been there, how has it impacted? Very few of them are actually doing anything. When you look at women politicians that go in and come out, after they leave that place, what do? How many of them are, still being seen and acting and active, or even supporting other women, engaging in, upliftment of women? How many of them are doing that? Let me give you an example. We have in Port Harcourt here. Port Harcourt River State has had 2 female deputy governors. This is the second one now, right back to back. We have not had any legislative. So that position, how has it been beneficial? Given the number of voters that are women and the number of candidates, no matter how little, you mean we have not been able to have a female legislator. So yes, it matters. It's not about numbers. It's about substantive representation. And that's that's what I think. Because you can have all the numbers, and if they are just symbolic, if it is symbolic representation there, if it is being called as the same paternalistic thing, come and take it. And then this thing of, they will tell you, okay, you will not pay, what is that form again? You will not pay the money for the form, you just pay interest or something. And then they will tell you, no, step down for the man, because after all, you didn't pay money. How is that inclusive? It has to start. We actually need to have the political will to be able to do something. And leaders, female leaders that are there, they actually need to have this, relationship with their constituents and with other women and bring them up, because there is no role model. You have very few female role models that can motivate other women. So that's what I think. I don't know if you're hearing me. I don't know if I'm being heard. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay.
There's another question that was sent directly to me that I just typed in the chat box. So if I could just read. Thank you, Prof. How would you describe the disposition and role of women in the emerging coalition of ADC, I think that's the African Democratic Congress that just from, towards the 2027 elections.
Then,
yeah.
you said, is there a possibility of having women being treated differently by the emerging force?
I think the question should be, are the women also willing to be treated differently? You see, when we talked about that model, the Nigerian context is very complex. And that's why I said, even with exemplary followers, you have some bit of resource and pragmatic followers running through it. Are the women willing to follow the ideals, as well as the men willing to allow them? It's a hand-in-hand thing. Now they are all defined. And I asked even in the LinkedIn post, and I said, now people are aligning and realigning. Where are the women? Are we playing the politics alongside? Because there's something that the Senate president said with this, this whole saga of Natasha. He said, when you come in there are certain, you have to be ready to do the work. And that was in another interview they asked, but I picked that. And then there's a writer also that said, when you're campaigning, if you're campaigning and then you're a woman, and so you want to really play this, oh, I'm a woman, I'm very soft, I'm very this, that can also backfire, because you're really, really playing into this attribute of helplessness. Women, we have to, if you want to be a politician, then you should understand that politics, you have to be strong. It's the message that you send across. The media picks it and embellishes it. Oh, this woman, and then before you know it, they're gender stereotyping you, what you're wearing, how your hair is. But if you go there and you actually put forward a strong message, it becomes more difficult for that message to be forgotten. Even if they want to, gender slur you, the message will still be there. But if you don't have anything to say, then it makes it worse. So back to your question, the alignment now, how many are you seeing women's voice? Are you even hearing them talk about women? Amechi was here in Port Harcourt, I think, some time ago, and it's the same thing. It's the same rhetorics. Women are very good for mobilize the votes. Even the man that said that gender slur in the House of Reps said his votes were given to him 60 to 70% by women. If we want to move forward, we have got to stop being used as symbolic representatives. And that is, it starts there. So it's not a one thing, extreme, one or the other. It's a blend, it's a complex thing. Even while we're seeking, the political will, the women too have to do the work. Even when you want the politicians or the male hierarchy to do what they are meant to do, because women being in the political space, it's not a right. I mean, you're not doing them a favor, you're not doing us a favor. It is the right. And there's something I want to add. I know you're going to stop me very soon. One thing I want to ask, why is it that female traits are seen as not right, it's not appropriate, it's not okay for the political arena, and then the male rights are seen as okay? Who determines what is okay and what is not okay? The man. What makes you think that almost half percentage of the population should not have a say in what happens in the country? We have to start this training, because socialization is so deep-rooted in. I'm telling you, when they say women don't support women, I said women have been socialized to think that we should not support women because they will not be okay. They cannot rule, they cannot lead. It's a deep-seated socialization. How do you stop this? You train them young. When you're trained in such a way that you think that politics is not for you, this is a problem. When you're trained to think that it is only when you're buying magazines, you should buy a fashion magazine, that is the training you're getting. But if we make it equal, the tendencies, kids tend to portray some things, allow them, open the way equitably. Whosoever wants to get into politics can do so. Then it begins to change. But you cannot say a woman that has been so socialized into thinking that she cannot be in the public arena, and then you go there and say, oh, women are against women. What is the root cause of all this? Things are changing, but it's still deep-seated. What causes it? So we have to look at these things and begin the training. We talk about training our kids, training our children. But what kind of training are you giving them? So we can't, as women, come out and say that the world is not treating us right when we are subjecting ourselves to the same problem. Okay, sorry, I think I'm getting some sign. All right.
All right,
talking.
thank you so much, Ma.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prof. It's been an exposition. We've really enjoyed ourselves. We have been enlightened. And without wasting too much of our time, I'd like to hand over to the founder of WATJ Center, in the person of Dr. Philip Olayoku. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Stephen-Adesina, for your expert moderation of this session. Our time is fast spent, and so we cannot but thank Professor Mfon Ekpootu for a very generous acceptance of helping us share this wealth of knowledge from research, talking about the gender dynamics from the global scale of modeling to our own local scale of trying to fit the Nigerian experience into these models, and telling us the importance of recentering women into the political landscape of Nigeria, even as we advance towards the 2027 electoral cycle. I think the key takeaway is the fact that we need to re-emphasize the agency of women, within this political landscape, and create a situation where there's a shift from being passive followers or passive political actors to actively, critically engaging, the political class in order to advance the cause of women within the political climate in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Professor Stephen-Adesina, once again for your time and expert moderation. Thanks to everyone who stayed with us through the lecture. We hope that you honor us with your presence in our subsequent lectures. And from here, on behalf of everybody at the center, we wish you the very best for the rest of today. So thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, bye. Thank you very much.
Prof. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you. I should be able to end it.